They said he was mad, talking to a goat twice his size, living with it like family. But what if I told you that goat once saved his life? And what if I told you this isn't a folk tale, this is real, and it starts with hunger, cold, and one final prayer under a broken tree? Brahim was the kind of man you could walk past 100 times without ever remembering his face. He wasn't old, but life had carved deep lines on his skin. His beard was patchy, his clothes were torn, and his eyes, like they had once seen something beautiful and had been starving to see it again ever since. The villagers of Budin knew him, but not really. They called him names. Pagal Ibrahim, some laughed. Others simply pitied him from a distance, dropping the occasional leftover roti near the banyan tree where he slept. Never too close, never with eye contact. Nobody knew where he came from. Some said he once had land, others whispered that he'd lost his wife and son in a fire. But Ibrahim never confirmed anything. He just sat quietly beneath the old peepal tree, rubbing his hands together for warmth, mumbling to himself as if in conversation with someone no one else could see. That tree had become his home. Its massive roots formed a kind of natural chair, and its dense leaves gave him shelter from sun and rain. He called it Ami, mother. That's how much he missed family. Each morning began the same. Ibrahim would wander through the edge of the village, looking for scraps of food, pieces of stale bread tossed out by the tea shop, bruised fruit from the cart vendor, maybe a half-empty bottle of water. He never begged. He only took what was left behind, what others had discarded. Despite everything, Ibrahim never complained. In fact, he often smiled, a small, gentle smile, like someone remembering an old joke told by a loved one. He would talk to the birds, to the wind, to the tree. Children once caught him whispering into the ear of a stone idol near the temple ruins. "He's crazy," they giggled. "Probably cursed," one muttered. "Touched by jinn," another said, with wide-eyed fear. But Ibrahim never responded to their mockery. His silence wasn't weakness. It was endurance. It was early monsoon season when the skies over Budin turned a strange shade of gray. Thunder growled like a warning. The villagers rushed to pull in clothes from lines, tie down their sheds, and get inside before the storm broke loose. But Ibrahim had nowhere to go. He wrapped his thin shawl around himself, tucked his knees to his chest, and sat under his tree, watching the clouds swirl above like a giant boiling pot. Then, as the first drops began to fall, something unusual happened. He heard it, a sound far too heavy for the rain. Thump, thump, thump thump. Not thunder. Hoofbeats. Ibrahim turned his head slowly toward the edge of the field. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, just the hunger playing games with his mind. But no, it was real. Standing barely 20 feet away was the largest goat he had ever seen. Its coat was deep black, soaked in rain and glistening like ink. It stood tall, too tall, nearly as tall as Ibrahim himself while seated. Its curved horns spiraled like a crown, and its eyes, they weren't wild. They were calm, intelligent, almost human. It didn't make a sound, didn't charge, didn't run. It just stood there in the rain, watching him. Ibrahim froze. His heart beat faster, but strangely, he felt no fear. Instead, he felt something else, familiarity. Like the goat had been here before, in a dream he couldn't fully remember. The rain thickened, pelting down in sheets. The thunder roared louder. But the goat didn't flinch, and neither did Ibrahim. Minutes passed, maybe more, until the goat slowly stepped forward. Its hooves barely made a sound on the wet earth, despite their size. Step by step, it approached the tree where Ibrahim sat. The man didn't move. His breath was shallow. Not in fear, but reverence. Like a priest seeing a vision. Like a child seeing their mother after a long time. The goat came close, so close that Ibrahim could feel the warmth of its breath. And then it sat down beside him. Just like that. As if it belonged there. For the first time in years, Ibrahim felt seen. Not looked at. Not pitted. Seen. His lips trembled. He whispered, half laughing, "Well, I guess you're my first guest in a long while." The goat didn't respond, but it didn't leave either. That night, under the peepal tree, a man with no one and a goat with no name sat side by side, sharing silence as the storm passed over them like a forgotten god. At dawn, when the villagers awoke to clear skies and dripping rooftops, they found Ibrahim exactly where he always was. But this time, he wasn't alone. Some children saw the giant goat and ran screaming. Adults came to chase it off, afraid it might be wild or dangerous. But the goat didn't react to them. It stayed seated beside the man under the tree, who now looked different, more upright, more alive. He was feeding it small pieces of dry bread from his cloth pouch, smiling between bites. The people whispered, confused. One shopkeeper muttered, "That's no ordinary goat." Another said, "Must be someone's lost livestock." But from where? A third one whispered what many were thinking. Maybe it's not just a goat. But Ibrahim had no answers for them. When asked where it came from, he just smiled and said softly, "It came when I needed someone. That's all that matters." From that day forward, the goat stayed with him. Every morning, every night, it followed him like a shadow, but never out of pity, always with purpose. A man once forgotten by the world, now had something watching over him. And though no one knew it yet, that goat would soon change everything. From the day the giant goat arrived, Ibrahim's life began to change in small, silent ways. He named the goat Bakar, simple, humble, fitting. The villagers scoffed at the name at first. Of all names, he chose that, they laughed. But for Ibrahim, it wasn't about naming a beast. It was about acknowledging a presence that filled the empty space no one else dared to enter. Bakar never wandered far. Wherever Ibrahim went, he followed, his massive hooves silent on the earth, his head always slightly tilted, as if listening. He did not pull at ropes or chew through it like the village goats. He did not butt heads or beg for food. He simply stayed beside the man who had once slept alone under a dying tree. In the mornings, Ibrahim would split whatever food he could find, half for himself, half for Bakar. Often, that meant half of one roti, soaked in stale water. But even in hunger, there was gratitude in the way he broke the bread, warmed by a fire made of dry leaves and faith. Some days, Ibrahim would speak aloud, not in madness, but in memory. "I used to have someone who waited for me like you," he said once, looking into Bakar's deep, unreadable eyes. "My son." He had hair like dried straw, and a laugh that made the wind stop just to hear it. Bakar blinked slowly. Ibrahim smiled. "You listen better than most people I've met." Children began watching from behind fences. At first, they came to mock, but soon they stayed to see. There was something fascinating about the way the man and the goat moved, never rushed, never loud, like shadows walking through sunlight. One boy said he saw birds sit near the goat without flying away. Another girl swore that grass had started to grow where Bakar had rested the night before. Whispers spread through the village. An old man claimed Bakar might be from the mountains, bred by Sufi saints. A woman argued it was no animal at all, but a cursed spirit watching over the madman. A few began tossing small offerings near the tree, not out of belief, but fear. Ibrahim paid them no mind. He kept to his routine, rising early, walking through the edge of the fields, finding water, feeding Bakar, and sitting under the peepal tree at dusk. Every evening, he would stroke Bakar's thick black fur and speak softly, not always in words, sometimes in sighs. There was a stillness that grew between them, a peace that needed no explanation. It wasn't just the villagers who noticed. The dogs stopped barking at him. The crows stopped circling overhead. Even the stubborn old ox, who used to shake its horns at anyone near the grain store, once followed Ibrahim and Bakar for almost half a mile, without reason, without being led. It just walked behind them, as if drawn by something only animals could sense. One day, Ibrahim found a small boy crying near the well. The boy had dropped his bucket and was too afraid to reach for it. Ibrahim walked over and gently coaxed him forward, helping him tie a new rope. Bakar stood nearby, silent and watchful. The boy, frightened at first, eventually reached out and touched Bakar's leg with trembling fingers. The goat stood perfectly still. Later that day, the boy's father brought Ibrahim a full meal, dal, rice, and warm bread wrapped in cloth. He placed it near the peepal tree without saying a word. Another day, a woman whose child had fallen sick asked Ibrahim if she could sit near the goat, just to rest for a while. She didn't explain why. She just sat there, arms folded around her knees, while Bakar lay beside her, unmoving, his breath slow and calm. The child recovered by morning. No one knew if these things were miracles, or if they only felt like miracles because for once, something in their world seemed untouched by suffering. But Ibrahim, he knew. Bakar didn't speak. He didn't perform tricks. But his presence healed something in the air. He carried a weight too big for language, too sacred for logic. Ibrahim had lived through loneliness so sharp it cut through bone, but now, finally, he was not alone. At night, when the village lights flickered out, Ibrahim would sit beside the goat in silence, watching the stars. Sometimes he would sing, a hoarse, broken tune from his youth. Other times, he would simply rest his head against Bakar's warm side and listen to the rhythm of his breathing. He no longer spoke to the wind. He no longer cried in his sleep. He dreamed of hills, green fields, and a child's laughter echoing under the sky. Bakar was more than company. He was memory, shelter, belief. But even as life settled into something quiet and sacred, a tension began to build in the air, subtle, like the change in wind before a storm. The clouds grew heavier. The river, once a peaceful shimmer beside the fields, began to rise, slowly, stubbornly, like a warning. And as the monsoon crept closer, Ibrahim would sometimes look up at the sky with worry in his eyes. Bakar, always watching, would nudge his shoulder gently, reassuringly, and Ibrahim would nod, whispering, "Whatever comes, we face it together." The bond between them was now unbreakable. But fate, fickle and brutal, was about to test what even the strongest bond could endure. The first rain came like a warning, sharp, sudden, and loud. That night, thunder cracked like gunfire over Budin. The wind howled through the narrow lanes, tearing at doors and flapping loose tin sheets like broken wings. The earth drank too much too quickly, and what wasn't soaked became swept away. But beneath the peepal tree, Ibrahim stayed awake, his shawl wrapped tight around him, watching Bakar rest unfazed despite the chaos around them. By morning, the village wore a new face, drenched, weary, and wary. Chickens clucked nervously on rooftops. Dogs refused to come out from under carts. Water stood knee-deep at the edges of the rice fields, where once only dry cracks had been. The villagers began whispering again, but this time, their words held fear. "It's only the beginning. Rivers rising faster than last year. They say the dam in the north is overflowing." Ibrahim heard them, but he didn't move. He trusted the land. He had seen water rise and fall before. And Bakar was still calm. That was enough for him. But this rain was different. It didn't stop. Day after day, it poured, endlessly, angrily. The river, once a slow, winding friend at the village's edge, now roared like a wild animal. It ate the banks, swallowed crops, and crept closer to homes with every hour. The villagers began packing what little they had, clothes, grain sacks, sleeping mats, and preparing to leave. Ibrahim had nowhere to go. No relatives. No cart. No money. And he refused to leave Bakar behind. When men from the district came with loudspeakers and instructions to evacuate, they shouted at him to move. "There's no one to save you if you stay," one man cried. Ibrahim stood at the edge of the tree, rain dripping from his brow, his hand resting on Bakar's back. "I've already been saved," he said softly. The men didn't understand. They didn't try. By the third night, water had swallowed the fields completely. The goats were gone. The cattle were gone. Most of the villagers had vanished into the hills. Only a few old men remained behind, too weak or stubborn to run. Bakar and Ibrahim moved to the roof of a half-collapsed mud house. There they waited, surrounded by an ocean of brown water, broken thatch, and floating debris. Ibrahim had saved some dry food and kept it wrapped in cloth, feeding Bakar first, always. But food ran out. And then something strange happened. On the fourth night, when the rain had momentarily paused, Bakar stood up slowly and walked to the edge of the roof. His ears twitched. His eyes stared into the dark water. Then he turned and looked at Ibrahim, long and hard, as if making a decision. Ibrahim, weak from hunger, sat still, trying to understand. "What is it?" he asked. Bakar didn't respond. He never had. But the look he gave, it wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It was goodbye. Before Ibrahim could rise to stop him, Bakar leapt into the water. The splash echoed through the silence. "No!" Ibrahim cried, dragging himself to the edge. "Come back! What are you doing?" He searched the water, squinting in the dark. For a moment, he saw the shadow, strong, swimming with purpose, heading toward the flooded road where many had vanished. Ibrahim screamed again, calling his name as if it mattered. But Bakar didn't turn. He vanished into the flood. Hours passed. Ibrahim didn't sleep. He kept watching the water, whispering his name, hoping for that familiar shape to return. Morning came, but not Bakar. Afternoon passed, then evening, and the next night. Ibrahim stopped counting time. His stomach burned with hunger, his throat cracked with thirst, but he refused to leave. He waited. And then, on the third day after Bakar disappeared, a rescue boat arrived. Two young men in orange vests found him half-conscious, muttering, clutching a torn piece of cloth that had once wrapped food. "You're lucky to be alive," they said, pulling him aboard. But Ibrahim didn't respond. His eyes stayed on the water until it vanished behind him. The flood passed a week later. The village lay in ruin, mud homes flattened, trees uprooted, livestock dead. But something strange had happened. They found people alive in places no one should have survived. 3 children trapped on a roof, where the current should have swept them away. An old woman rescued from a tree she couldn't have climbed herself. A man half-drowned, who swore something massive had pulled him from the depths and placed him gently on dry land. Each of them spoke of the same thing. A black goat, tall as a man, eyes like firelight, moving through the flood as if it belonged to him. Some said it was a hallucination. Others said it was God's mercy. But a few, those who remembered Ibrahim and Bakar, said it was something else entirely. They said the goat had returned the village's debt. That he had come not just for companionship, but with purpose. That he had walked into the water to save those Ibrahim could not. Ibrahim never spoke of it. He recovered slowly, quietly. He sat once more beneath the new peepal tree that had grown after the flood. But Bakar never returned. Still, Ibrahim waited. Every evening, he looked to the edge of the field where the water once rose. And though the goat was gone, he would sometimes smile, as if he still felt something beside him, breathing, present, bound forever. They say Ibrahim never cried again after that. He lived with peace, telling the story of Bakar to anyone who would listen. Some say it was just a lucky goat. Others say it was sent from above, a guardian. All we know is, sometimes, angels don't have wings. Sometimes, they have hooves.